Thank you for being here today. My name is Shoshana Hershkowitz. I am the campaign manager for the Empire State Campaign for Childcare. We are the state's coalition for achieving universal childcare here in New York. This campaign, this coalition was founded in 2017 and has been doing the work of really advocating for making childcare a public good rather than a private burden endured by families across the state. And we believe that childcare should be, as we said, a public good, something that everyone can access, regardless of zip code and income and immigration status. We believe that early childhood education is an important and noble profession, and that childcare educators, early childhood educators, deserve to be compensated as the professionals that they are. So today we are here to talk about how do we get from where we are right now, this system that is under incredible duress, that is struggling, but the providers are struggling to keep their doors open, families are struggling to access it. And how do we get to that truly universal system where this is the public good that families need and compensate providers as they deserve to be compensated as real professionals who are caring for and educating our youngest New Yorkers? And we're excited because we have a really good plan. We have a plan that recognizes the moment we're in and recognizes where we need to be and takes us there on a very deliberate roadmap that really provides what everyone needs and does not destabilize an already struggling system. So we are incredibly excited to share this with you today. We kicked it off last week at City Hall, and we're excited to now present it to the whole state. I'm going to turn it over to Shanita Bowen, who is the Chief Operating Officer of ECE on the Move. And ECE on the Move are early childhood educators in a residential family setting. They're a large group of incredible educators. And I'm going to turn it to Shanita to just give us a few words on why this moment matters for child care providers across our state.
Thank you so much, Shoshana. Good morning, everyone. Shanita Bowen here. And so the time is now. It's been quite a few years where parents and providers, educators, family childcare educators, and in our case, have gone to Albany. We've informed our legislators that the time is now that workers, educators should be paid as an educator of a young child should be. It still hasn't happened, and we're wondering why. We're not looking for significant investment. We're looking for transformative. We have to transform how early education looks, and right now it doesn't look like a priority. There are no people are leaving the industry without pay, without benefits. We have 70-year-olds leaving, having done family childcare, and without a penny saved. For doing extraordinary work. And so I'm just going to reflect for a moment. I am a former family childcare educator for 16 years, and I prided myself on my program and serving the community. I was always full. I had extended hours, and I had more than one staff because it was that type of program, responding to the community and individualized care, very specific to what parents wanted. But I never understood why year after year, my program I was always in jeopardy of being evicted. Year after year for the entire 16 years. There's no way that an educator who cares about the community and the work she does and always has a waiting list herself should worry about losing her apartment because the pay just wasn't enough. And I never understood that because I wasn't a part of a coalition as this one to understand that the pay just wasn't paying. And so in those times, and I did close during the pandemic, in those times, there was a waiting list that never moved, never. And so we did win with the help of this campaign and many of you all, we did win a significant investment and we expanded access to care, and that helped. But here we are again, still not paying the workforce, no matter which modality we're in. We have nothing to show to our assistants as to why they should join our programs. This is not a lucrative or a sexy job anymore. This is, it doesn't, if you're not being paid and you don't have benefits, who's joining? And so the waiting list is just as bad as it was back then. Now, we are seeing at ECE on the Move, we're getting grievances from parents who has a child, a 4-year-old in Head Start, I'm sorry, in pre-K, a 2-year-old in a family child care program who will be set to recertify soon, and then the parent just had a baby who is now on a waiting list. In what day and age does this make sense that 3 children are separated and one on the waiting list? This doesn't make sense, and it doesn't help educators fill their slots. This is going nowhere very fast. So our simple message this morning is please support any we are EC on the Move is a proud supporter and a member of Empire State Campaign for Childcare. We support any ideas because we have nothing to lose at this point. So we have to start rolling something out. We have to start showing the parents and the providers that this is important, the work they do is important, accessing childcare. And the other thing about accessing childcare and being on the waiting list, parents and educators are forced to negotiate. Because if a parent is on a waiting list, they still need care. They still have to go to work. They still have to do what they have to do. They still have to support families. And so we're asking providers who have to serve as a community, and that community is tied to a certain pay, right? And so a parent can only pay but so much. Parents were never able to pay the true cost of care. We've never, as an educator, we've never earned the true cost of care, and parents were never able to afford it, right? And so if they couldn't afford it then, when there was assistance, what do you think is happening now when they have a child that lands on a waiting list? They now have to negotiate with a provider and put our programs in jeopardy because you cannot do that. And so we're going to find more and more educators going underground. This means the system will break worse than it is now. We have to do something about it. We have to do something about it now. So I'm going to turn it over to Pete Nabosny to tell us more about the program. And I'm here for questions. And so is I see other EC on the Move leadership. Pete?
Yeah, thanks so much, Anita. Hi, everyone. Pete Nabosny, Policy Director at the Children's Agenda, based in Rochester. And I'm fortunate enough to co-lead the Empire State Campaign's legislative work group, which has really driven a lot of the policies that we're going to talk about today, which were kind of adopted by the campaign as a whole over the last few months. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint here. Hopefully everyone will be able to see it. We are going to take questions at the end of my brief presentation here. And we just asked we knew there was a lot of people from the campaign on. We asked that we clear room for questions first from reporters, and then if others have questions or things they want to raise, we'll have space for that too. So here we go. All right. Okay. I'm going to walk through the high levels of our plan, and I'm hoping someone can also provide a link in the chat to the full report if someone wants to really dig into the specifics of the plan that we're putting forward. So Empire State Campaign, we've already talked about it briefly. We are an ambitious campaign that is aiming to achieve a childcare system in New York that's high quality, free, equitable, and universal for families, while paying childcare programs the true cost of care with a thriving wage and benefits. So here's a little visualization. We're going to kind of come back to it again, but we've laid out in the report released last week a 6-year roadmap for free universal childcare from birth till age 13 across New York State. And our plan is structured to build on the system that we have today while transitioning the system that we know we want in the future. And so it in the early years, it relies heavily upon strengthening and reforming the child care assistance program to ensure that families who are eligible for care, who are currently receiving care, who are on wait lists to receive care, can get that care that they seek out, while we build towards the future. And all of this is predicated on having a workforce that is compensated to their worth for what they're doing for children and families throughout New York State. And that's not just a kind of a moral calling that we know it's important because they need to be compensated for that valuable work, but because we'll never grow to the system that we need without paying more, without investing in programs, without allowing people to make a good living in this field. So that first step is let's build that workforce. Let's build that capacity. Let's increase the quality of care for families all over the state. Right now, we have, if every single slot across New York State was filled, we can serve about 28% of our children who, qualify based on age. The true number is probably a lot lower than that because we know from surveys that the Empire State Campaign has done, talking to providers, talking to families, that you have programs all across New York State that are under their license capacity because they don't have the staffing to open up that extra classroom for that family child care provider to take on more kids because they can't find an assistant. So that 28% is really a high watermark, and likely the number is much lower than that. Childcare workers, it bounces around year to year, but generally they're making less than 96% of other professions in New York State. It is one of the lowest paying jobs across the state, and it's a real barrier to getting people into this work, retaining them in this work, and building, again, the capacity that we know New York's families need. So there's a bill, a piece of legislation that we think is critical to building this state of universal childcare that we're seeking for. And so we're encouraging the legislature to pass the bill I'd mentioned here in the PowerPoint this year as part of an effort to get us to that. We also know, and the report goes into some other details about this, that workforce compensation alone is not going to get us there. We know there's needed investments to build capacity around the state, to increase the pipeline of early childhood educators, to give people a path into this as a career. Because if we do want to achieve that system, we've got to really increase the number of people who can see this as a career that they can make. The other key tenet that we want to build from as we're trying to build towards universal child care is investments in strengthening, both with funding and with critical reforms, New York's Child Care Assistance Program. This has been an area of tremendous growth since Governor Hochul took office. The number of children receiving care through the Child Care Assistance Program when she took office is around 60,000 children. It's now above 160,000 children. So more than 100,000 additional children are getting care thanks to the investments that the governor and the legislature have put into this program over the past few years. Unfortunately, a number of counties, including Erie County, all of New York City, Onondaga County. We just learned a couple days ago that Suffolk County has also closed enrollment. And lots of rural counties across the state have run out of funding. There's more demand than they have the funding for. And so families are being put on wait lists or turned away altogether and not able to apply for assistance. This shows there's demand there for that care. But the system doesn't have enough funding in it to meet that demand. We also know from New York City that the families that are on the wait list are largely families who would have qualified before any reforms to this program were made a few years ago. The majority of families on the wait list in New York City are families below the federal poverty level. This is a program that's a critical support for low-income families, and we need to find a way to get funding into the system to open up those wait lists and serve families in need. While we're doing that, while we're strengthening the workforce, investing in it, investing in capacity across the state, and reforming and properly resourcing the Child Care Assistance Program, we think it's time to start bridging towards that universal care system that we want. And we're proposing two models that we would scale up in different parts of the state to make that a reality. One of those models is what we're calling a community eligibility project. This would make childcare fully free and available to families with children in communities where a significant number of low-income families reside, and they would not have to go through the very difficult process of applying and proving eligibility for the child care assistance program on their own. The other model is a capped fee project, which is borrowed a bit from our friends to the north in Canada, where families could enroll with a participating provider, and their out-of-pocket costs would be capped at $100 a week, and the state would pay the balance of the cost of care up to the reimbursement rate set by OCFS. This would dramatically lower the cost of care for a lot of families. So just a little more on the community eligibility. Our proposal is in year one to really seed this program, get it built out, see how it would, what details need to get worked out, how the Office of Children and Family Services would develop it, but pretty quickly scale up. And the first standard we're setting is that any child living in a community where more than 80% of children are currently income eligible should be able to get expedited access to this program. So that would include a lot of communities within New York City, most of the South Bronx neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Queens. It would also include a lot of our larger upstate cities like Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. And it would bring in a lot of rural parts of the state where you have a high share of families that are eligible. And then this graphic just kind of shows the current situation for a family who's, let's say, living in Westchester County, and they've got a toddler in center-based care. The blue line is showing kind of what they pay right now if they're kind of qualifying within the child care assistance program. So they have very, very low fees until they hit a magic point where they no longer qualify for assistance because their income has exceeded 85% of the state median income. And then all of a sudden their costs skyrocket. And we know that we need to serve families on the right side of that graph there. But also, if there are families who are on the left side of that big steep cliff, they may opt to participate in this program too. This would not be means tested. This would not say, okay, you make this amount of money, you pay this amount for care. It's saying, if you choose to, you would have your fees capped at $100 a week. And there wouldn't be sort of the asset tests and proof of, all these things that currently trip up a lot of families. So back to this roadmap and trying to wrap it up here, which was done by Julia at AQE, and great work, Julia, with this. Again, we want to start with building from what we have, and we do think we have a structure that we can build upon if we invest in the workforce and we reform and improve the child care assistance program to serve those families that need that help now, while we bridge to the plan for universal that we've laid out in our report. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing and see there's a lot of comments in the chat. And happy to open it up for questions again, first from our media friends who've joined us today.
This is, this is Berkeley Breen from News 10 NBC in Rochester. Can you hear me, Peter?
Yes, hi, Berkeley.
Okay. All right, hold on a second. I'm running a little hot here. We've done stories where families are going to lose their child care because the counties that they're in don't have enough money to pay for a full 12 months. So one of those slides was exactly what we reported on. Are there tweaks to the system that could be made to get those families covered when their child care stops? For instance, telling counties they don't have to have enough money to pay for 12 months, maybe reduce it to 6, reduce the eligibilities so that it's the spots can go to the most needy families.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are tweaks to the program that can be made in some instances, and I know OCFS is considering kind of what they have discretion to do under existing law and what would take acts by the legislature to change. But fundamentally, I mean, we have some data from New York City that shows that the vast number of families that are receiving assistance are very low income. Even if we stop serving the families that are, a little bit above the poverty threshold, but by no means wealthy, we'd still be running into a funding shortfall. And ultimately, we're trying to achieve a system where all families that need care and seek it out can receive it. And so I think there are some tweaks that can be made, but shortening the time of care for a family from 12 months to 6 months doesn't address the fact that they'll still need care in 6 months to continue to work or pursue an education or whatever the case may be. So fundamentally, the system needs more resources, and it needs to work for families and providers across the state. And so there are lots of things we could change, but a lot of it does come down to adequately resourcing the system to meet the demand. We don't apply the same kind of standard to other programs. When a family applies for supplemental nutrition assistance program, SNAP for food stamps, we don't say, sorry, we've run out of funding this month, come back next month. We don't do that with a lot of programs, but we have structured childcare in that way, and we need to change that.
Yeah, if I could also add, you see in the move here, yeah, parents are getting the notices that says you qualify, we're out of funds.
Yeah, and it's very difficult for those families to continue working, and it really can completely disrupt their economic well-being and housing and all sorts of other things.
Peter, can I ask another question?
Sure.
In order to achieve what you want to achieve, where would that money come from?
Yeah, so the governor has a coalition for universal childcare that is working on a plan for revenue, and we're hoping to see that soon. And from some of the reporting some of your colleagues have done, that they're considering, the governor's office considering different revenue options, including perhaps increase to corporate tax rates in New York State. A lot of our friends at other organizations have put forward a lot of other proposals. The state's fiscal picture is looking better than it did a few months ago, and all of that. But investments of this kind, the scale that we're hoping to achieve with a plan for universal, will require new revenue, and we want to make sure that the state has a sustainable plan to get there, and that would likely, involve raising revenue from different sources. Our campaign hasn't taken a position on like this one particular revenue source is the way we want to fund it, but we do think there are options for the state to get there.
And hi, everybody. Marina Marco from AQE here. And I would also like to point out, as Pete said, that the state's fiscal outlook looks better, but also that the state has, in fact, about $30 billion in reserves. So we are, as a state, we have lots of options that involve raising revenue, that use money that we already have in our savings, and even potentially looking through what we can redirect in some of the things that people have said are not actually wise spending. So there are a lot of options here.
Peter, I don't want to monopolize the questions here, but if I may ask just one more,
Sure.
do you have a ballpark figure on how much money this would cost?
Yeah, there's a couple estimates out there. We're hoping to get another couple to firm up from this plan. But P5 Fiscal Strategies worked with a coalition, Raising New York, which is at Ed Trust New York a few years ago, and had a range of $14 to $20 billion. There's census data that suggests that today families are paying about $17 billion collectively out of pocket across New York State. So it's significant sum. It's a significant sum that families are paying right now. And we think a key piece of this would involve shifting a lot of that, again, private burden to the public as a whole to help support families. But I'm hoping to get a firmer number for you soon.
I just want to flag before Jack asks his questions that I did drop a report in that chat that came from the Children's Agenda about revenue and sustainable sources that Pete was referencing. that Pete happened to have taken part in writing as well. This guy does not stop. Uh, Jack, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. In a conversation last week after one of their hearings, the governor's budget director indicated to us that he was open to, or the governor was open to the idea of these community pilot programs, and potentially even more than that. Just curious if there have been any conversations with the governor or the Division of Budget on those specifically, and where those conversations have gone at this point.
Yeah, we've had conversations with folks in the governor's office. We've had conversations with folks in the legislature. We're trying to evangelize this approach as much as we can. And I think there's clearly some openness and a desire to do something really significant and get New York on the path to universal child care. And so I can't speak for them though, but I certainly hope that they are strongly considering the path that we're putting forward here, and we look forward to working with them to make it a reality.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to pipe in to say, and I'm Dee Dee Hill from the Schuyler Center, that we are referring to these as bridge to universal childcare projects with real intention. We do not see these as pilots, but rather as stepping stones toward a goal that we share with Governor Hochul, with Mayor-elect Mamdani, to achieve universal child care. All children around the state should have access to high quality child care.
Hi there, this is Amy Feiereisel from North Country Public Radio. I have a couple of questions, I guess, about feasibility. And I guess the first one is I wanted to ask, it does seem like, you know, in this moment, there is more energy and more sort of movement from the top about the idea of universal childcare. Could you talk about why you think this is the moment? Because there are also big challenges in this moment, right? Like, you know, federal funding and concerns about the state having to allocate more to programs that it hasn't in the past. So yeah, just like why is this the moment, and what makes you think that, you know, the legislature and the governor and the powers that be are really going to listen?
I can jump in for a minute and then turn it over, but I think that New York families are struggling, and all of the data is showing that it is lower and middle income families that are leaving the state. And other than housing, childcare is the largest expense for families. So if we want to create this New York that, you know, we have heard from Governor Hochul and Mayor-elect Mamdani that families can live and thrive in, you cannot ignore childcare. And I think that is why this is the moment. And, you know, we come into this legislative session well aware of the challenges that we face, but we also know that, you know, if we really want to tackle affordability as more than a buzzword, then childcare has got to be a high priority for the governor and for the legislators who craft next year's budget. And happy to have anyone else jump in from the team.
Yeah, if I could also say, this is also the moment because parents and educators have advocated for several years now. They've talked to their legislators and they're confused. And there's nothing more heart-breaking than for a parent to submit to us a grievance about, well, I thought we won money into CCAP. I had more children. Why am I back on this waiting list? What is going on? So we're going through life. We're going through live experiences. We're not aware. The common parent and educator are not aware of what's going on at this level. So they want to know, and they want answers, and they want solutions.
And so I just wanted to confirm this, you know, this is going to be something that you're pushing for the 26-27 budget. Okay.
Yeah.
And then sort of the other question I had was, I've been doing a lot of reporting about the CCAP funding and talking to individual counties, and at least their commissioners of social services are feeling really bleak about the possibility of next year. They're being told by state officials, I think, on a pretty frequent basis, not to expect any more money. So I don't know if that's, you know, OCFS wanting to not make promises that they can't keep, but that's the sense that I'm getting from, from the county level is like, there is no more money and we're not sure quite how to get at this. So that's what they're projecting for themselves for like a year or two from now. Could anybody address that?
So this is where this campaign comes in. And I'm sorry, Pete, I jumped ahead of you. This is where this campaign comes in, right? Our job as advocates is to make sure that the state actually steps up and takes action, especially given the context we are in after affordability has been such a huge part in the mayoral campaign in New York City, which has half of the state's population. And as we are moving into a new legislative session, which carries another election and puts a lot on the table for the state, right? 2026 is a big year. So we are very well positioned with this roadmap to actually make our case to the legislature and the governor that this is the moment that they need to prove to their constituents that they see this as an issue, that they actually want to tackle the issue of affordability for every New Yorker, not only for New York City, because this is a statewide issue. And this is where we invite the counties to be to advocate with us, right? This is a county administered program. The counties can also step up with us and advocate for more money for a universal childcare program that can address everybody's needs. So we think that this is the moment, and this is the moment.
I will actually piggyback on that really quick, and then we'll pass it back to Pete. One of the things that was really wonderful last week when we launched this at City Hall is that we were joined by members of the New York City Council alongside our state elected officials. And just as Marina was saying, this is both a county and a state issue. I think that the more we have different layers of government prioritizing this and advocating, the stronger our case is. So we welcomed our New York City elected officials last week, and we certainly hope that other counties will step up and make the case as well. And Pete, no one's cutting you off anymore. It's all you.
No, I'll just say, I mean, I don't think it's possible to take meaningful steps towards universal childcare while leaving often very low income families all over the state without access to this critical program. And so again, that's why our plan, it builds from the fact that we do have this existing structure that does not perfectly serve families. There are all sorts of challenges with it, but it is a critical support that low and modest income families rely upon. And so I don't see how we can say we're getting to universal childcare if there are, wait lists that are larger than the number of children enrolled in a program, which is the case in many parts of the North Country today. So, that's just something we have to figure out a way forward on because we can't leave those families out while we're building something else.
Thanks so much. I don't want to take up too much time. So anyone else who wants to ask questions should ask.
You should ask a follow-up, Amy. It's fine.
Yeah, okay, I definitely will then. Sorry. I've talked to a lot of you individually because I cover childcare for North Country Public Radio. And I guess I just wanted to note that there's been a really recognizable shift within our legislators in the North Country about childcare and about it becoming an increasing priority over the last couple of years, and something that does not seem to be a partisan issue at all. So I guess I wanted to ask sort of what you're seeing movement-wise in terms of the legislature.
I can jump in really quick on this one and say that we have met with legislators across the aisle, across the state of all political stripes, and this is a consistent issue, whether it is in urban, suburban, or rural areas. And there is a genuine concern from all legislators about this, and we've had productive conversations about it. And I think, exactly what you're talking about in the North Country. I've seen it in Suffolk County. I've seen it in Western New York. It really is, when a problem is this pervasive, I really do think you do have to have everybody rowing in the same direction, which is making this a public good.
I wanted to jump in too to point out that one of the strengths of our plan We think of it as very strategic. It has been structured to allow New York State to draw down the maximum federal funds that we currently receive for child care assistance as we're moving towards universal child care. It's also structured to build from the strengths of our current program. The state has dramatically expanded investment in the child care assistance program over the last few years, and has dramatically expanded eligibility. And this has led to more and more families trying to access this really desirable program. And so we recognize in this plan that we need to build from these strengths as we're also transitioning to a transformed system that is truly universal, and without all of the barriers that exist in the current system, and of course centering the workforces, because none of this works without a well-compensated, well-supported workforce. So we feel really confident that this is the path for the state to achieve this goal. And while this is a challenging moment, it is absolutely the right moment to take these big steps.
Just checking in, are there any other press questions before we move forward? When we send out the press release, that will include the link to the report, which should also address questions as people are, doing their work. Debbie, do you want to go ahead?
I just, I'm curious. I didn't see it in the report and I've missed several meetings, so forgive me if it's been spoken about. It states that we're requesting to cover all modalities of care, home, that we assume that's family, group family, childcare, center-based childcare, school care. What about, especially for the infants, stay home with your childcare to offset that cost of going back to work and overcome the challenge of shortages of the infant care due to the ratios and maximizing in childcare programs? Was that a thought during the process? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, we had to kind of limit somewhat what we could kind of get into this one single report, but I think, I'll speak for myself, and I don't think I'm just speaking for myself. I think we're all pretty strong supporters of efforts to provide parents with resources to, if they choose to, for the period that they're able to, stay home and care for the very young children and infants. And so there's been talk about a proposal to double paid family leave, the length. I think that's something that I'd be very supportive of. I think we need to work on some of the funding for that a bit to make the benefit enough for someone to be able to sustain themselves off of it. There have also, for very low-income families, been proposals to change some of our public assistance policies to allow for parents to receive a greater benefit when they're on public assistance, to be able to stay home, and that could really limit some of the that infant crunch that you're talking about. We think there's a lot of things there, but certainly people being able to provide care for their own children and getting support for that is something that we're very supportive of. And I think you're completely right that we have a shortage of care at all ages in terms of capacity, but it is that is most acute for very young children. And it's very expensive to provide infant care. So anything we can do to kind of help support parents in those early stages of a child's life is really important, and something we would, I think, heartily endorse.
Thank you.
It's a great question.
Before we close this out, I'm just wondering if anyone else has questions. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, but I want to make sure we don't miss anyone. So if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
For those who might be a little shyer, we're also available if you want to send us an email. I'll put my email in the chat. Happy to talk some more about this plan if a question comes to you later.
Pete, I have to ask, if we're only asking for what we're spending, how do we increase teacher salaries?
We're not asking for what we're spending.
Okay.
We think we need to spend a good bit more. I mean, I was throwing out that $17 billion number because that's also like inclusive of all costs of care. So that's nannies and au pairs and babysitting. It's what families are spending on care in total. So the sort of formal care is a different number than that, but we know we would need to spend more than what we're covering now to boost wages and benefits and all of that. And we think, there's a lot of families that would like childcare now that don't qualify, and they're kind of piecing together care week to week or reducing hours at work so they can do X, Y, and Z, and care for the children that would prefer to have something else that's available to them so that they could take that job or that promotion or whatever else. And so part of the idea of this is let's give people care so that more people can work. And so that's going to involve more kids in formal care settings, right? So there's increased spending a couple different ways there.
Thank you.
Good question, Dawn.
I am about to drop in the chat the link to our petition to show your support for the New York State Child Care for All. So here goes. Please fill this out. We think this is going to help show the legislature and the governor that there is widespread support for universal child care with this roadmap. So please click on it.
Yes, please click on that. Are there any other questions before we close this out? I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for your years of advocacy. I want to thank our reporters for continuing to cover this really important issue for New York's families. And I really do want to thank Pete Nabozny as the lead author on this report for really bringing this to life. It was a conversation we had over the summer as a steering committee about the best way to achieve universal childcare. And you really brought all of our incredible discussions to the page. And so we're grateful, and we are excited to get this done this year in New York State. Thank you so much for your time.